But back to our top story now. President Cyril Ramaphosa has backtracked on a response he gave before the National Assembly earlier this month. The DA asked him about a 500,000 rand payment made from Bosasa CEO Gavin Watson, allegedly for the benefit of his son, Andile. Ramaphosa now says the amount was actually a donation towards his campaign for the ANC presidency. For more reaction on this story, we are joined by Democratic Alliance National Spokesperson Soli Malatsi from our Cape Town studios. Soli, your party's reaction to this breaking news?
Good evening, Vuyo. Look, this admission by the president that he lied in Parliament when he claimed that the 500,000 was for consultancy work done by the son requires a full inquiry into the relationship between Bosasa and the president's family, because this raises the suspicion that to what extent has the president and or his family benefited from Bosasa, and also, which other companies and donors made payments into that trust. This sudden, correction of his response just sounds like desperate damage control of realization of the magnitude of what this taints towards his presidency. The bottom line is, when the president was confronted by the question, he was very confident that there was an existing contract between Bosasa and his son, that the contract even had ethical stipulations, that he has satisfied himself that everything was in order. And again, the president speaks a lot about a new dawn, but this is just reminiscent of what happened also during the Zuma era, where the president benefited through businesses that did business with the state and the government which he leads. It is highly unethical.
Reading through his correction, what do you think actually happened subsequent to him answering that question in the National Assembly when Musi Maimane asked him?
Look, I think he was flat-footed by that question. And this revelation now just shows to the extent to which that he was surprised by the question and didn't tell the truth at that time. But be that as it may, the records of Parliament reflect a version of the president's answer, which we now know is a lie, and there should be consequences for that. But most importantly is that we should now put the spotlight on who are the other funders, who are the other donors to the trust fund, and what was their intention for those donations. Did the president personally solicit those donations? What was promised in return? Because we're coming on the heels of a state commission into state capture, and this is just but one extension of that. It is highly unethical that a company which has benefited from lucrative contracts with the government would make a donation to the president's trust account of that magnitude. 500,000 is not peanuts. It's a lot of money. And it is highly impossible that the president would not have been aware of this at the time that the deposit was made.
Well, he says, and I quote from the statement, "The donation was made without my knowledge. I was not aware of the existence of the donation at the time that I answered the question in the National Assembly."
It would just reek of, convenience, but also recklessness if donations are being made into one's presidential campaign, and given the history that this country has had, particularly also given how the president sought to differentiate himself from Jacob Zuma and all the controversy that covered the Friends of Zuma Trust Fund, which was used to fund the former president's political program, that you would expect that someone of President Ramaphosa's caliber would apply more scrutiny in determining the extent of the donations that he was getting. But be that as it may, the president, in providing his answer at the time, if he was not fully aware of all those donations and the mechanisms that came with it, he should have said so in Parliament. But he gave Parliament a different version of that story, that he now has a sudden realization that it was somehow incorrect. We think this is just convenient damage control by the president, and that we require a full inquiry into that. I mean, it can't just be that, oh, by the way, I did not have the full facts at the time, and now I do. Please forgive me. There has to be consequences in this, but there also has to be a process that establishes which other companies or individuals that have done business with the state actually made donations into that trust account, and what was the purpose of that? Because what we are dealing with here is the prospect of unethical influence towards the president by businesses. And we are currently dealing with, a Commission of State inquiry that seeks to address this particular issue that is now manifesting itself through donations like this.
What nature and form, very briefly, should that inquiry that you are proposing take?
Well, that inquiry should look into, one, all those payments that were made into the trust fund, to establish the extent of the relationship between Bosasa, President Ramaphosa, and his family in detail, so that we can establish whether there are other additional payments, what was the purpose of that of those payments, and the nature of the relationship, and more importantly, to establish what other individuals who have done business with the state made those donations, because we have to address this culture of individuals and companies that are funding politicians and political parties with the intent of benefiting from the state. It is a highly unethical, and it needs to be tackled.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much, the national spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance, Soli Malatsi.